So, welcome to another episode of Women Work Wellbeing. I am really excited to welcome this week's guest. We have Kate Mason, who is a presenter for TNT Sports and Eurosport, as well as a sports columnist. Welcome to the podcast, Kate.
Thank you, Zoe. What a delight to be with you, especially today on a very grey day when I've just come back from a big job in France where it rained a lot, but at least we saw a bit of sunshine. We wake up this morning, it's completely grey in London, and then I've got your smiley face to look at, and your tan as well, I think. So yeah, you're reminding me of holiday vibes again. So thank you.
I'm so glad you've actually talked about the weather because when I woke up today, I was just like, what is this? So yeah, we're both in the UK and it is pretty grim. I can't wait to talk about where you've been over the summer though. But before we dive straight into the Paris Olympics, there's so much to talk about. I just want to start right at the beginning. I said just before we hit record that we do a lot of work with colleges and unis and we're inspiring younger women to just go for it. So like talk to us about how you've got into this incredible career.
That is so great. I think it is really, people often have said to me, the thing about unless you can, it's hard to be it if you can't see it. And some of the times I'm like, no, you can be whatever. Like, don't put yourself in a box. Don't need someone to be out there first for you. And then I remembered that the time when I first really thought I could become a sports presenter was, and I thought about it. I love sport my whole life. I brought up an only child, so I would always like play various whatever was going, at school and at groups, just to like, have a few mates. And um, and then so yeah, I'd always love that. My whole family big sports fans, watch lots of football, watch cricket, everything. But the first time I really believed, it was after I left university, where I'd had a radio show, on the whatever local radio thing that we were making at university and at school as well. Pretty amazing that they had that kind of setup. And then I would always thought it would be really cool, but it was London 2012 and seeing well, Gabby Logan would have been doing it, but I think really Claire Balding, like seeing the way that she was right at the heart of everything, and she hadn't been a professional athlete or anything, which that is the route that some people go down, but wasn't my route. I'd been to university in Cambridge to do English, and I'd done various other things, and so seeing her do it and like really being at the top of her field and bringing special stuff out of some of these people who are just in the most amazing moments of their whole career and their whole lives in some cases, I thought, well, this is a pretty incredible profession, and the fact that she has gone out and done that, there just doesn't, why not? Like, why could I not? I had no idea of how I would get to that point. There's not, it's not like becoming a teacher or being a lawyer or any of these other things. There's not a big path that you can follow. There are some schemes around, but there's like every person wants to get onto those, and it's kind of hard to find out how you do it, or it was back then. So I just thought, look, let's go for this. My first thing I needed to do was just find a way to earn money immediately after university so that I'm not from London. I thought, we got to get to London. That's where all the opportunities are, like Dick Whittington. And so I basically just applied for a whole load of like jobs, whatever it was, just so that I could get moved down and get started. And then in all my spare time, I would kind of just Google around, see who was in charge of this newspaper or this section of the newspaper or this little scheme or whatever. And I was writing match reports and just like random stuff that I'd seen on telly. And then I also used to play squash to a quite decent level, so I knew a few of the people who ran the squash tour, like the thing that the pros compete on. So I spoke to them and asked if I could come to a few big tournaments, and would just do these little like made up video reports, like, I'm here. I hope that they're all lost to history, but yeah, that's how it all started.
Oh my God, I just love everything that you've just said. It reminds me of, I think my brother used to do it when he used to play for his grassroots. He used to do little
Yeah,
write-ups. And I think if you've got that in you, that little spark to just go the extra mile. This is what I'm hearing when I'm interviewing amazing guests like you. Was it always the sports angle? Was that like the passion deep within?
Yeah, it was. I don't know why. It was always just about, I didn't really realize actually until further down the line that the key point was to be like the specialism was sport, but the skill or the profession is broadcasting, right? So I have subsequently, I hosted a Radio 4 series, which was about a range of different things, about how to find potential in different areas, including education and sports. But yeah, it was only after I'd sort of got on the line that I was sure that it would be definitely broadcasting, but it was always, I want to spread sport because, and it is about being female, really. I felt like I hadn't always thought that women were totally welcome in all sports, in all of the football coverage I used to watch. I didn't feel like I was always at home in those spaces. And I have, as I'm sure every person of my kind of age, I'm 36 now, has experiences, sporty girls of like trying to do something, trying to be a part of a team and not being welcome, not being allowed to try it, being told that this sport is not for you. And I was always like, why is it? Yeah, why is it not? So I wanted to spread that whole world and make it more open to women. So I think I was driven by I've read a lot of books about like other people, sort of stuff you talk to your guests about, really, like other people's kind of careers and how things shape up, and they talk about how it's important to feel like you have got I don't know if vocation is exactly the right word, but you've got like a reason for doing this. It's hard sometimes to go to work if you're just sort of doing it because you've got to earn money, which we all do have to do. It's a good thing to do too. But if you've got like a real drive and a real belief in like that this is an important thing, and that you're trying to do a bit of good. Obviously, this all sounds a bit, a lot of my work is really fun and not hard, and it's really fun for me. So I'm not trying to make out that I'm some like, really completely selfless person. I'm just being a sports presenter so that everyone else can have a great life. Clearly there's stuff in it for me, and I love the performance side of it as well, being live, like getting to be there right in the stadium just before you go on air, and like, or anything could happen and you're just trying to convey it to people. But that was a huge part of my motivation for wanting to get into this space, was to open it up more to people like me.
Yeah, well, and thank goodness to people like you doing it, because it's just paving the way. We've talked, haven't we, about I can't remember whether it was before we hit record, about showing the younger generation that they can do it. And I think what was interesting about what you said, it's asking those questions. Girls can't do certain sports. We've heard this rhetoric over and over again, but you taking that moment to go, well, why? Hang on. It's like that. It's that question. This comes up time and time again in our community. We've got Jobs for Women, we've got like this free membership for women, and we're about training and empowering, and a lot of what comes up is use your voice. Question.
Yeah.
Well, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
And it was funny when my kids, because my little boy plays at academy level, he's 9, football. He was like, well, mummy, why couldn't you play football? And I said, well, when we did PE, the boys went to do football and the girls went to do. And he said, well, why? But why? And I love
great question.
Great questions. And it makes me think, why didn't I question it? Why didn't my mum and dad? But it was kind of like just accepted. So I think people like you and your passion, and I can't wait to talk more about everything that you've done on that live element. I'm so interested in, like, do you get butterflies? But that passion really shines through. And I think that that questioning, it's just really exciting that you had that within you to question and then go, no, this is the route I'm going to take. Let's dive. I mean, there's so much I could go off in every direction, but I just need to talk Paris Olympics, because it's like hot off the press. How was it?
Oh my God. Zoe, it was like, so as I've just mentioned, the London Olympics was a big starting point for me, thinking that this is a space that I could be in. So when I then, so I work, my TV presenting is with, as you said, TNT Sports, with Eurosport, which is basically one family. It's the same broadcast company. And they had, specifically Eurosport, they had hundreds of thousands, it felt like, but I don't know what the exact number is, of live sports hours that they were broadcasting of the Olympics. They had every single sport, they were covering it. You could watch anything you wanted to watch. And so when I realized that this was in our space, I was like, is there any chance? Do you need? Because normally my main sports with TNT, well, my main sport with TNT is cricket. I'm the cricket anchor for all of the cricket that we have, and then I'm the host of the UCI Mountain Bike World Cup, which is like, well, there's more events next year, but it's about 9-10 weekends of mountain bike. So yes, there is mountain bike in the Olympics. Cricket, not so much. But I was like, please, can I go? And yeah, they said yeah. And so we all got all the different people from within the team who got appointed to be there. Might not have been on their like main thing that they were doing. So I was put on rowing and canoe slalom and canoe sprint. I don't know if you caught any of the canoe slalom, because it was just the most amazing, crazy sport. It's like people just fighting their way down rapids and fighting each other in their canoes and their kayaks. And sometimes there's a bit where you had to like roll underwater in your kayak. It was just like the most fun kind of joy of sport that you could do. Anyway, so that was the specific area that I was mainly based in. But because I was at the Olympics, so for that I was getting to speak to people just after they'd, like we said about Clare Balding, just after they'd done the most amazing thing in their lives. And you feel it so much, there's something so special about these athletes, what they've put themselves through. And I think that feeling of whatever it is, the emotion that like travels through the air, and you can just, it's like a special kind of joy of being alive kind of experience to be around that. It was one of the most incredible things I've ever been a part of. And some of these women in particular who I interviewed after they won, there was GB did really well in rowing in particular, and there was this pair of women who won gold, and they'd missed out on any kind of medal at Tokyo by 0.1 of a second, and then they won the gold. And just to stand there with them while they were like soaking it in, and to ask them exactly how they felt and how they'd got to this point was just, you'll never forget that. I'm not doing a great job really of putting it into words, but almost
No,
because
you are.
you can't.
Honestly, the way you are describing it, like I've got goose pimples, because it's almost like the emotion is tangible, like from one human being to another. And I think the way you are, I've only met you for like 15 minutes, but the passion and enthusiasm, you've got such an amazing sort of spirit, and to be, I can imagine exactly, you are describing it perfectly, because it's like someone is euphoric, and it's everything that they've worked towards for so many years. This is what people watching at home, on the couch going, well, that was rubbish. These people are working their whole life at whether they do, hit the target that they want. But how amazing that you were there sharing that. That's incredible.
Yeah, and you learn so much as well, just about how people. So my column that you mentioned, I write in the Metro every other week, and I try and talk about psychology elements or things from day-to-day life in the context of sports, because I want as wider. I don't necessarily only want sports fans to read my column, and yeah, I think the experience I had of human interaction in that moment, not just as you point out, when people have just won gold or achieved everything they're after, but when they'd not, when they'd missed, like the men's rowing pair who I spoke to, they were kind of supposed to win gold, like they were the ones who were going to win from GB, and they got silver again by tiny little margin. And again, that experience of talking to two people who were just completely devastated, but also knew that in terms of reach, like their sport is not, people aren't constantly watching, well, some people are, but a mass audience is not constantly watching rowing, right? And so they were just realizing that they had to kind of claim their moment, they had to speak, they had to try and convey what it meant to them, but also they were just completely crushed by what had just happened. And kind of almost just as a social experience, it was like quite incredible, really, because you wanted to empathize, but you're also there to be, well, actually at the Olympics you're not there to be dispassionate. Like you're not there as like it's not news reporting. You're not like, hello, this is what's happened and you should have won and what's your problem. It's more like trying to convey the emotion. But yeah, it was the only times I cried, though, and I'm a bit of a crier, was when people had really won, or they'd really overdone their expectations. You're looking at them and their little faces just glowing, and you're like, oh my god, oh no, I'm crying. This is not professional.
I'd be there with you. I'd be standing by your side crying as well. We could cry together. So when you think about, I mean, it's so incredible how far you've come, and that you are now, a leading female voice in this male-dominated industry. And you've talked about how, you started when you were doing those like write-ups, which I just love. That is so me. That is something I would do, and my brother did it. What setbacks, though? Because I'm talking a lot with my kids at the moment about, it's not the result on a Sunday when you play the game. It's the process. It's the going to training, the highs, the lows, everything in between. So what setbacks have you faced to get? Because obviously you're smashing it, but what are the setbacks?
Oh my god, this is great. I knew you would liven up my grey, whatever day this is today. You sound like a great mum, by the way. This is really good. Yeah, really good motivational conversations. Yeah, I mean, a million setbacks, of course. Like, it's, as I think I said at the beginning, talking about trying to get to London and trying to earn money, people aren't like, oh, please come and present my TV program about sports. You seem enthusiastic. You kind of have to find a way to learn how to do it quite well before you can really get anywhere. So you have to figure out how to learn that kind of on the job, but without losing track of where you're trying to get to. So I've had experiences where, and I won't say where this one was in particular, but where I got what I thought was one kind of a job, and I was told, oh yeah, you're going to be on air. It's quite early on, so I wouldn't have been brilliant, but that was you've got to do all this kind of work, but you also get a chance to be on air. And then I got there and realized that after several months of suggesting stuff and blah blah blah, I realized that wasn't the case, and so I had to find the kind of, I guess, the courage to leave, to not just keep doing the thing and hoping that, because it I mean, I guess maybe if I'd stayed for many years, maybe something would have come of it, but just at that point it wasn't the right thing to do. And then, of course, I mean, I spent 2 years in Qatar presenting for a TV company. So Al Jazeera is the big TV network out in that part of the world, and they have a sports arm which is called beIN Sports. So I was a presenter for beIN Sports. I mean, that was a massive opportunity and a huge step forward, because it meant I was presenting lots of live hours for the first time, really. But the setback element was just that it was a really, really hard place to live. And so, after I'd been there a year, I'd said to myself, I'm going out to Qatar, and I'm not gonna come back until I've got to the next step. I'm making this big sacrifice of leaving all my friends, so I need to get to a position where I can hopefully get a job in the UK and do what I'm trying to do. But of course, there's no certainty that will happen. And once you're over that, you're very far away from all the people that could potentially employ you back in London, and you have to keep slogging away. And it was a pretty hostile environment. And then the third, the biggest one really was I was on a full-time contract at Sky, presenting for Sky Sports News mainly. I wanted to do more football specific, like reporting and getting out and about, but it was a great job. And I lost my contract. They were getting rid of a whole load of people. They were making cuts, and it was kind of well, I don't want to be mean. It's a hard thing to get rid of people, like to make people redundant, or in my case, to just cut their to end their contract. But it wasn't very nicely done. It wasn't like particularly easy or understandable or suit. Like, I didn't have a long time to figure out what I was going to do. So that was the hardest thing. Like, because that just, to me, that came out of nowhere. Like, I was going along, I was quite proud of where I was at in terms of my broadcasting level and what I'd learned and the bits that the responsibilities that I was being given. There was some women's football coming in, and I'd always had a massive enthusiasm, and for that had been one of my earliest things that I'd done, was like, again, writing quite crappy little match reports for Arsenal women, or Arsenal ladies as they were back then. And yeah, to suddenly be like, surprise, you don't really have a job anymore. It's just like, oh my
Gosh.
God. Like, I don't, as I said to you, I'm not like a trust fund kid. I don't have I don't have other people supporting me. So I was, at that point, it was really hard to know, if I can't earn money, how is this going to work? You talk about persistence, which is obviously really important. But you have to also find a way to make sure that you can pay the bills while also being persistent. So that would be the biggest one, because there was a kind of fear of like, oh gosh, this is a very I don't want to, now I feel bad because I'm telling all the students that you talk to, I'm telling them that this is not that secure as an industry. But the point was, I felt quite crushed by it, because I thought I must have done something wrong. And as it transpired, it wasn't that I had, but you had to like keep your confidence that I'm doing the right thing. I'm good at this. There are other jobs. There are other people. I've shown so much of what I can do, and I just had to keep working, getting littler jobs, and just believe that it would come back around.
Thank you so much for your honesty with that whole story, because we need to talk more about when things get really tough, the
Yeah.
failures. I'm like, literally like, let's talk about when things go wrong, because things go wrong all the time. And it's interesting as well, a lot of what we talk about on the podcast and in the community is that we need to do a lot of inner work. So you could have put all of that emphasis on, well, maybe I'm not as good and da, 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 but it's actually no, having that moment, just like you've described, that you have put the work in, and it was not a reflection on you. It was a decision, a bigger decision. And I think it's great that you're really honest about that, because if anything, the younger generation that are maybe listening in and in our community, it might be like, oh, it's not a stable profession, but it's actually the real raw insight into it. And it is amazing how you've talked so passionately about it, but being real about that journey, that pathway, we've got to be real. And this is in loads of different industries. We do a lot on women in STEM. There's a lot on the women in finance. That we're all at this mid-career level, and all the the men, it's a sweeping statement, but a lot of the senior leaders are male. And so in any industry you're in, we seem to be up against it, which is kind of a nice segue into, I've got to talk about male-dominated industry. Like, we've had Danica Preem, ex England rugby international, on. She was amazing. She was really honest about the horrific online abuse. Like, there was an article, trigger warning, where she'd had a message saying someone had wanted to slit her throat. BBC sports presenter Emma Jones talked about misogynistic X-rated messages that she got on social. I mean, oh God, I couldn't get really mad about it. But how has that been for you? How have you navigated it? Have you had that kind of attention online?
Oh, Zoe, I mean, I assume, unfortunately, that, yeah, I don't think there'd be a woman. I mean, specifically in sport
Mm,
presenting. I don't know about other kinds of presenting, although I feel sure that that other people in other spaces in the media would get it as well. There seems to be something quite specific about sport, I think. I guess I don't know. I probably don't want to speculate, but I guess, the audience is majority male in some cases, and there's a kind of culture around it.
mm,
And I think, yeah, the most shocking time around it probably was at Sky, because as you've heard from me, I'm kind of serious about the job, and I just want to be a really good broadcaster, and I want to convey the story of sport. And I understand that me as a person, I'm of interest as a result of doing that. But I suppose I didn't really think that I would become so I suppose so accessible to that. Well, I didn't feel like I was being accessible. I felt like I was just going to work to do my job. But yeah, on the one hand, there's the abuse. There was just this ridiculous moment on Deadline Day is a big day for Sky Sports News, where kind of I think the most people watch that day, where all the transfers between various football teams are finalized. And I asked the question about I think it was Wilfried Zaha, whether he would move to Everton, and I was making a comment. He'd said that he wanted to go to a club where he could play Champions League football, and I said to my guest, it's a question. I said, so Wilfried Zaha said he wants to play Champions League football. He's being linked with Everton, who didn't have Champions League football. Do we see him ending up there? And those weren't the exact words, but that's basically the tone, and that's basically how it's expressed. And somebody, an Everton fan, I can only assume, clipped this up and put it on a whole load of fan forums saying that I like hated Everton and I was, all sorts of words. And it just suddenly started flooding in on like one of the biggest days of my career. Suddenly I was just getting abuse after abuse about this apparent disrespect that I'd shown to Everton. And the terminology that people use is just, I just talked about it on a friend of mine in the mountain bike community. There's a podcast, hosts a podcast, great podcast if you're into mountain biking, called Downtime. And we talked a bit about it as well, because when I joined that community, when I took over as anchor for the tour, there was a lot of affection for the people who had gone before. Understandably, you've got, it's like they're your friends, you see them every week presenting it. Of course, it's not my decision that I'm going to become the new face of it. That's just how it was. The company that I work for had decided. And we talked a bit about that. And I said to him as well, like, I can completely understand why people have views about it and care and are passionate. And that's what's so great about sport. And, I've been called every name under the sun online. So I'm probably better at dealing with it than your average person, but I'm still not great at dealing with it. And also, I don't think it's good for you if you're sitting at home doing that. I don't think it's good for you. And I also don't think you should forget that there are real humans on the end of it, not just me, but also like the young guys who are dealing with the social media, who like run the accounts, for example. They're just sitting there at home. Sometimes they're working from home on their own, just like getting all this like terrible abuse. And I think on the one hand, the person delivering it's not good for you, and then on the other hand, there's humans on the end of it. I think it's not a winner. Don't do it.
Just don't do it. If you're listening, don't do it.
Don't do it.
It's interesting, just you are such an empath thinking about that person. Because I worked in marketing, running social media accounts. You forget, don't you? It's like, this is not just directed towards the person it is intended for. How do you deal with it, or how do you deal with it, on an ongoing basis?
I mean, I don't think I've solved it. I think I just try and see it. I try not to engage with each. Well, I have two methods. I try not to engage with each thing as it goes, but because if it's a lot coming in, you got to just not engage with each thing. You have to just sometimes take yourself away from it. And then, to be honest, Zoe, I do also sometimes like once a month or once every 2 weeks, depending on how I'm feeling about it, I might tell someone to we're probably not allowed to swear on here, but
You can swear. Go for it.
Maybe not get fucked, but like I sometimes would say, just go back at them, because I feel like it is bullying to some degree, right? And I feel as though it's important to sometimes say to people, no, you not some of you are going to get away with this, but I'm going to come back at one or two of you. So just that is a risk that you're running. And almost always people either delete it or they like get very, oh God, sorry, I didn't realize. The one thing that I'm still not, I haven't really figured out about is the kind of what we would call maybe the pervia side of things, which, I find that quite uncomfortable still. People sort of make like, this is probably going in too deep, but people kind of make like montages of you and say they've like put you on various sites, and I find that to
That
be a bit of a problem.
yeah, that's a whole other podcast that we need to record. It's like Emma Jones when I was reading about, the X-rated messages. But
Yeah.
I've done the same with Holly Willoughby and loads of
Mm.
other, getting these. How does it give people the right to land in someone's inbox with? And I was listening to another podcast my therapist goes to me. I think they were talking about, dick pics
Mm.
landing in, and you open it and it's like you didn't want to see it, but it's landed in your personal inbox as
Mm.
yeah, that's a whole, I mean, God,
It's a whole
it's
nother area. I hope
yeah.
it's improving. Like, I don't know if it
Mm,
I mean, I think there's ways like on Instagram, for example, of blocking certain words so that you can
yeah.
I saw a few actually today where it was like, your settings mean that you will not see this this message.
Yeah,
And you're
that's
like,
good.
oh God. But at least you don't have to, right?
Yeah.
Um, so
It's
that
like lurking.
yeah. So I think it feels well, some social media companies clearly aren't getting better at this, but it feels like some are. And hopefully that's a process that will continue, because yeah, it's really opened up a whole new space to me that I never knew. Like I keep telling you, I just like sport and I just want to communicate about it and talk to
Yeah.
people. I did not realize that I would be discovering that apparently seemingly every other person on the internet has got a foot fetish.
Well, we had Rachel Wolford on who won The
Yeah.
Apprentice, and she said similar. She's like, I went on a TV show to talk about business, to talk about my business, to get Alan Sugar's investment, and then I was just ripped apart, like, um,
Yeah.
my marriage, my boyfriend, what I spend my
Oh,
money on that I shouldn't have won, that I only won because I'm a pretty face, and I was just like, this, it just happens all the time. What does the next 10 years in sports broadcasting or for you look like? I feel like we've made, when we had Danica on, she was
yeah.
like, we have come so far. I'm not here to just go, it's been really hard. But what is the next 10 years looking like?
Well, I hope that it's from a female perspective that it's just fully on the up. Like we've seen, um, I know this is not where this doesn't define everything, but the transfer fees for female footballers are going up and up every single transfer window. So that's a symptom of how much people are willing to pay female footballers to play football. And at Paris, there was equal numbers of male and female sports and male and female sportswomen and men. And that was the first time that had happened. So what I really think is that as soon as you have a space where it starts to be that there's nearly even, it doesn't have to be completely equal, but edging towards an equal number of men and women in that space, it just becomes, from my experience, it just becomes healthier and healthier. Because my first job, the one I got, to earn money, was in tech. That's another famously male-dominated space, and I think I was the only woman on the team there, and it was
Mm,
a different vibe, but it was similarly unbalanced because it meant that you were always representing like all women every time you showed up to
yeah.
work, and it just makes you feel very, very exposed. And so I think within sport and within sports broadcasting organizations and sports organizations generally, the more opportunities that women have to just be to just be in the space, to just be on the telly doing the
Yeah.
sport that they're doing,
Mm,
the more normalized it becomes. And I read somewhere that the sort of, as equality in sport has grown, there seems to have been more pushback against it online. Like there's been almost a surge in like anger against female sports women and female commentators. I'm sure you've read about it and seen
mm,
it. But I think certainly over the next 10 years, but I think even now it feels to me like we are pushing beyond that. Like that was a kind of a blip in the inevitable rise of women in sport, and we can all just benefit so much from that. I don't think this is 2 and 3 podcasts, but I don't, the patriarchy we know doesn't really benefit men or women. So I think having a space where people can play sport and respect each other and watch sport and respect each other has to be good for everybody. And that's the way I see it developing. I mean, on a kind of sports specific level, what's really great about how it works in broadcasting now is that you can watch every sport you're into, you can find it, and you can just watch it every week if you want to. So I think that's only going to grow and grow, because people can just like go off and watch canoe slalom every time it's on. And that is one of the great things that the internet has actually done for us, is opened out that space. You don't just have to watch all the mainstream stuff if you don't want to. You can form your own community, you can talk about it, and you can watch it week in, week out. So
Oh, I love
yeah,
that.
yeah, I
Yeah.
feel very hopeful about the future.
Oh, that's amazing. I've got to just ask, because we talked off camera about the whole news anchor, because my last question is about, if someone is listening that's thinking,
Yeah.
I want your job, or how the hell do I get into it? Where do they start? What are your top tips, and what's the difference? You know, you're an anchor. Can you just sort of sum up on that one?
Yeah, of course. So well, I think the thing I said about trying to meet people and trying to figure out where the spaces are for you to get little jobs to basically practice your craft is really important, because for me, there's not really any substitute for practice in broadcasting. It's very, very rare that someone shows up and they're just like, no, it's impossible. You can't just show up and be on TV for the first time and be normal and yourself and say what you want to say and feel totally comfortable. That's not possible. But some people find it easier than others. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be the ones who are the best after they've been doing it for some time, right? Just because even if it's not the most natural thing to you. The distinction. So my job as an anchor is, I'll be the one. So like if you watch Match of the Day, for example, Gary Lineker, he's the anchor of that show. And then whoever's sitting to his left are his pundits, basically his guests. So he is a former professional footballer, obviously, but he doesn't need to be, because his role is to hold the conversation together, to get on air, to get off air, to do everything editorially that the team that is running the show, the production team, has decided before they go live, and to listen to all the people in his ear saying, you know, here's some breaking news about what's going on. That might not be a good example in that particular show, but yeah, they sometimes have breaking stories. But to listen to all of the additional stuff that's happening, and to look after the two guests, and to make sure that they can be the absolute best that they can be, and they can say the most interesting stuff, and to just editorially be very on point, while also being fun and you know, making people welcome into the show. So that is that role. The pundit role is the one where you need to have played to a professional level, and that's sometimes confused by people when they're just watching it casually. So what I would say is editorial understanding is a really important thing. I didn't go and do a master's in sports journalism in the end. I did a normal English degree, and then felt like I wanted to get out there and start trying to break in. But you can do, and they are brilliant. So if you have the chance, then that is something that you can look into. Obviously, it's costs quite a lot of money these days, so I wouldn't want to say that's the only way. There's lots of online courses about like journalism that you can try and use, kind of free online courses as well, to just learn as much as you can. But also, it is worth just practicing. The challenge is you can't. So one thing I did do is like practice with video, like just with normal football with the sound off, and then I would sort of talk about it to myself on my own. The challenge with that is you can't then replicate the live experience of, first of all, being scared that you're going to get something wrong because you're going live to the nation, and second of all, of people talking to you and things changing all the time. But you can practice. There's like auto cue technologies that you can run on your laptop, and you can practice doing that. You can film yourself, and the first thing I ever did, actually, in terms of regular live broadcasting, was travel news. So there's a travel news desk, I guess, in central London, where if you're listening to the radio and someone comes in and tells you that there's a pile-up on the M11 or whatever, that is from a place in Farringdon where there's like, I don't know, 10 people sitting there and then dialing into a radio station and explaining what's going on the roads. So what I'm telling you that because it's that practice, that number of hours that you're trying to get to where you feel comfortable with your broadcasting. And I think it's, for me, it's about figuring out how to earn those hours. That's the real challenge. But if you keep putting the practice in, then hey, sky's the limit.
Sky's
See
the
you
limit.
soon.
That is brilliant advice. Thank you. We have gone so far over, but you are such a delight to talk to. I could chat to you all day, and it's this rainy, grey Tuesday in the
Zoe,
UK. But
the sun is coming out.
yay!
I think the sun is I don't know, I just feel like the light has lifted a little bit as we come
Yeah.
to the end of our chat, which seems like a pretty good metaphor.
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much. There was so many golden nuggets in there, and just that last, that part, just that explanation of the anchor, tough gig. I can see why you are the perfect person for that role. That is not easy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. You're just bloody brilliant. Thank you for joining us. If people want to connect with you and follow you, and yeah, where can they find you?
Yeah, come and talk to me. I'm in all the places that you'd expect. It's at KVL Mason.
Awesome.
Those are my middle names.
And I'll
Virginia
put the link.
Lucy, in case you're interested.
Oh, I'll put the links, any links in the show notes. And thank you so, so much again for coming on and sharing your amazing expertise and experience.
Thank you, Zoe, and thanks for all you're doing. It's really, really brilliant that you're making this space and getting everyone involved. It's such an honour to have been a part of it.
I really hope you enjoyed that chat with Kate. I tried so hard to keep it to our normal time, but she's just such a breath of fresh air and has such interesting insights into the world of sport as a woman. And I'm here for it. More of this, please. I hope that she has, whatever career you're in, whatever stage you're at, whatever age you are, I hope that Kate has inspired you to think that anything is possible. We have a lot of sort of chat in the community. And I actually spoke to a career coach yesterday about women when they reach potentially mid-career level, that they're seeking a change and they're not always sure what it is. And it might become like a side hustle where they're doing their work thing and then starting their own business. But I think there's a bit of a movement in that we don't have to have that set career for our whole life, do we? And anything is possible. And I just, all of the Kate sharing those, really simple ideas of get practicing. If you are inspired to do this job or do a job like Kate does, just put yourself out there and do it. There are 24 hours in the day. If you set yourself a little challenge just to, film yourself recording on camera for like half an hour a week, you could set yourself a little challenge. I do believe anything is possible. And sometimes it's just putting it out into the universe, giving yourself a bit of accountability. And similarly, if you do not want to be a presenter, the same applies. Are you in a career or a job where you are stuck in a rut? Are you just doing it to pay the bills? Is there anything that you can think about doing that's going to, light you up a little bit more? We talk a lot about intuition on the pod, listening deeply to that inner voice. It is powerful and it's always there within you. So I hope you will take something from this podcast that you could maybe implement and change in your life. And if anything, just give Kate a follow because she's just brilliant. I love chatting to her. So that is it for another episode. If you haven't already, please drop us a review. 5 stars would be just wonderful. If you've been listening to a few eps now, please do leave us a written review and share it on your socials. If you're not in the free members club, please come on over. It's community.jobsforwomen.co.uk/join. We've got free training. The podcast video it will be in there. And there's just loads of other resources, free yoga, free mindfulness, free meditation, and loads of masterclasses. So that is it. It's been a pleasure as always. I'm grateful to each and every one of you. I will see you next week.